They don't teach you how to be unbreakable. They teach you how to perform, how to blend in, how to be polite when you're falling apart inside. From a young age, you're handed quiet expectations, not to feel too much, not to question too loudly, not to stray too far. But a man who follows every script never writes his own. The world doesn't need more men who obey. It needs more men who, not with anger, not with noise, but with presence, with clarity, with quiet strength that can't be shaken by rejection, betrayal, or loss. Stand. And that kind of man, he's not born, he's built. Through silence, through failure, through nights where you doubt if you have what it takes. He's not the loudest in the room. He's the one who doesn't flinch when everything falls apart, because he's not held up by others' opinions. He's held up by his own code. And if you don't have a code, if you don't know who you are and what you will never compromise, the world will chew you up, mold you, use you, and forget you. So this episode is not for the man who wants comfort. It's for the man who wants clarity. It's for the man who knows that being soft with life only makes life hit harder. These are the 12 principles that forge an unbreakable man, not in image, but in soul. If you're tired of living on shaky ground, it's time to rebuild your foundation. Starting now. 1. Know who you are, or the world will tell you who to be. Most men never take the time to answer this question. Not really. They assume they know who they are because they've been called certain things their whole life. Smart, funny, tough, lazy, nice, difficult, weak, whatever. But that's not identity. That's noise. Identity isn't built by labels. It's built by awareness. And awareness doesn't come from what others see. It comes from what you're willing to look at when you're alone. When the room is quiet. When there's no one left to impress. Because the truth is, if you don't define yourself, someone else will. The world will shape you in its image. And it's not doing it out of love. It's doing it out of convenience. It wants you predictable, easy to manage, controllable, and if you let that happen, you'll wake up one day with a job you hate, in a relationship that drains you, surrounded by people who don't even know the real you, because you never gave yourself permission to become him. Every man has 2 lives, the one he's been handed, and the one he's capable of living. And the bridge between those 2 is brutal honesty. The willingness to say, this isn't me. This isn't who I want to be. I don't even know who I really am yet. But I know I'm not this. That moment, that clarity, is the beginning of everything. Because once you know who you're not, you begin to carve out who you are. And that process isn't comfortable. It's not pretty. It means letting go of old roles. It means disappointing people who only liked the mask you wore. It means silence. A lot of it. You might lose a few friends. You might even lose a few parts of yourself that you thought were permanent. But that's what growth feels like. And here's the secret. The more you know yourself, the less you need from anyone else. You stop needing applause to feel worthy. You stop needing company to feel whole. You stop changing your tone, your values, your opinions just to fit in. And that's when real strength shows up. Quietly, powerfully, without permission. But let's be real. It's easy to get lost. Easy to confuse your role for your reality. Easy to think that because you make money, or keep things together, or stay calm, that you've got it figured out. But none of that means you know yourself. That's why you need to ask the uncomfortable questions. What do I stand for when it's inconvenient? What do I believe when no one agrees with me? Who am I when I'm not trying to perform? The man who can answer those questions and live by them is unbreakable, because life will test you. People will misunderstand you. You'll be criticized, excluded, rejected, and maybe even ridiculed. But if you've built your identity from the inside out, none of that will shake you, because you won't be acting, you'll be being. You'll walk into rooms where people talk behind your back, and you won't flinch, because you know your worth isn't up for discussion. You've already decided. Knowing who you are doesn't mean you've figured everything out. It means you've decided to stop living someone else's script. It means you're willing to disappoint the world before you betray yourself. That's what makes a man solid, grounded, unshakable, not his strength, not his success, not even his intelligence, but his clarity. Because when you know who you are, you can lose everything and still walk with your head high. So the real question isn't, what do you want to be? The real question is, what are you no longer willing to pretend to be? Start there. Start with honesty. Start with the version of you that doesn't need to impress anyone, not even you. And if that version feels unfamiliar, good. That means you're finally becoming real. 2. Never trade your self-respect for acceptance. Every man is tempted at some point to shrink himself just to be liked, to laugh when he doesn't find it funny, to agree when he doesn't believe it, to stay silent when his gut screams otherwise. And it always starts small. A little compromise here, a quiet yes there. But what feels harmless in the moment becomes corrosive over time, because each time you choose to be accepted over being authentic, you chip away at something sacred, your self-respect. The world rewards performance. It gives attention to those who conform, who flatter, who play along. But here's the brutal truth. The moment you start acting for applause, you stop living with dignity. And that's not a price worth paying. Respect is something you carry when no one's watching. It's the quiet confidence that you don't owe anyone your compromise. It's what allows you to look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and not feel like a fraud. Acceptance is cheap. You can buy it with lies, flattery, or silence. But self-respect? That's earned. Earned through discipline, earned through boundaries, earned through moments where it would have been easier to fold. But you chose to stand. And make no mistake, there will be a cost. You'll lose friends. You'll get labeled as difficult. You'll be left out of circles that value agreement over truth. But what you gain is far more valuable than what you lose. Peace. The kind of peace that only comes when your actions and your values match. Here's the real test. If you had to choose between being respected by yourself or accepted by everyone else, what would you choose? Because too many men live their whole lives trying not to offend, not to stir the pot, not to be alone. And in doing so, they betray themselves one compromise at a time. They become easy to like but hard to admire, pleasant but hollow, safe but soft. You can't fake self-respect. You either have it or you don't. And the only way to keep it is to stop negotiating with your soul. That means saying no when it's awkward, walking away when it's easier to stay, speaking your truth even if your voice shakes, not because you want to prove anything, but because you refuse to lose yourself just to fit in. And let's be clear, this isn't about being cold or arrogant, it's about honoring your boundaries. You can still be kind without being a pushover. You can still be compassionate without being compliant. Strength doesn't mean shutting the world out. It means letting it in without letting it change who you are at your core. Most people won't notice when you choose self-respect. They won't applaud when you walk away from the wrong crowd. They won't cheer when you say enough to someone who's taken too much. But you'll know. Deep down, you'll feel the difference. You'll feel stronger, lighter, clearer, because there's no heavier weight than carrying the version of yourself you created just to be liked. So the next time you feel that tug, the urge to soften your truth, to pretend, to go along just to keep the peace, pause. Ask yourself, what's the price of this moment? Is it worth losing my self-respect over? And if the answer is no, then stand firm. Let them misunderstand you. Let them walk away. Let them call you whatever they want. Just don't let yourself become someone you're not proud of. Because once you lose respect for yourself, no amount of applause can fill that hole. A man who respects himself doesn't need the world to validate him. He walks with quiet power. He doesn't chase, he attracts. Not because he's trying to impress, but because he's living something rare in this world. Truth. And people may not always understand it, but they'll always feel it. 3. Walk alone if you have to, but never bend your values. At some point, every man comes to a crossroads. One path is crowded, familiar, full of smiles and approval. The other is quiet, uncertain, and often lonely, but it leads to alignment with who you really are. Most people take the easy route. They blend in. They silence their voice to keep company. But a man of principle? He understands that walking alone is far better than walking with people who require him to betray himself. And make no mistake, the pressure to conform is real. It's in your job, your friendships, your relationships, the subtle expectation that you'll laugh at what they laugh at, agree with what they believe, live how they live. The moment you dare to be different, to say, I don't agree, or that's not who I am, or no, I won't go along with that, you'll feel the tension. You'll feel the silence in the room. You'll feel the distance grow. But here's the truth. That discomfort, that's the cost of integrity. That's the price of staying loyal to your values. And if you're not willing to pay that price, then you're for sale. Simple as that. Because once you start bending, it never stops. First, it's your opinion, then your tone, then your choices, and eventually you look around and realize you're not living your life anymore. You're just performing in someone else's. That's not connection. That's quiet self-abandonment. The unbreakable man doesn't avoid discomfort. He expects it. He knows that standing for something will always come with resistance. But he also knows that bending for everything will leave him empty. So he chooses the harder path. He lets go of the need to be liked by everyone. He doesn't measure his values by applause. He doesn't sell his character for comfort. He lives by a code, one he's written in solitude, through struggle, through failure, through deep self-examination. And because of that, he walks through life with a rare kind of clarity. You'll be tested, not in big dramatic moments, but in the small ones, when your friends make a joke that crosses a line, when your boss asks you to cut a corner, when your partner pressures you to act against your conscience. Those are the moments that reveal who you really are. Do you speak up? Do you stay silent? Do you pretend to agree? Or do you hold the line, even if it means standing alone? And here's what they don't tell you. Walking alone isn't weakness. It's strength, because it means you're willing to protect your values, even when no one else will. And yes, it might be isolating at first. You might feel misunderstood, left out, even judged. But over time, something shifts. That solitude becomes peace. That distance becomes clarity. And eventually the right people, the ones who respect your integrity instead of trying to reshape it, they show up. But only once you've stopped lowering yourself to be accessible to the wrong ones. So if you're the only one saying no, let them talk. If you're the only one taking the high road, keep walking. If your silence feels loud because everyone else is screaming lies, let it roar. Because in the end, the man who can stand alone with truth is stronger than 100 who bow together in comfort. Being unbreakable isn't about muscles or bravado. It's about the quiet decision to never compromise who you are, no matter who leaves because of it. So ask yourself, right now, what am I still bending for? Who am I shrinking for? And what would happen if I stopped? The world may not reward your integrity today, but your future self will, and his life will be built on something no crowd can give or take away. 4. Face pain. Don't run from it. Pain has a voice, but most men spend their lives trying to mute it. They distract themselves. They numb it with noise, entertainment, women, work, alcohol, achievement, anything to avoid sitting still and feeling the sting. But here's the truth no one wants to hear. Pain doesn't go away just because you ignore it. It waits, quietly, patiently, and if you don't face it, it will shape you from the shadows. Every man carries wounds. Some are loud and obvious: heartbreak, failure, betrayal. Others are quiet: shame, regret, childhood pain. And because society teaches men to be strong, to be tough, to never break down, most of us learn to suppress instead of confront. We say, "I'm fine," when we're falling apart. We joke through our sadness. We work through our grief. We act like silence is power, but it's not. It's avoidance in disguise. Facing pain doesn't make you weak. It makes you real, because strength isn't the ability to pretend nothing hurts you. It's the courage to sit with what does and not run from it. When you stop avoiding pain, something powerful happens. It starts teaching you. You realize that the heartbreak showed you what matters. The loss reminded you what's sacred. The failure pointed out where you weren't aligned. Pain becomes the mirror that reflects your truth. But to get there, you have to stop fighting it like an enemy. You have to stop treating discomfort as something to escape. Pain isn't the problem. Your relationship to it is. Most men treat pain like a fire. Get away before it burns you. But the Stoic sees it differently. He walks into the fire, not recklessly, but deliberately, because he knows it's in the fire that strength is forged. Discipline, clarity, resilience, all born in the flames of discomfort. And no, it's not romantic. Sitting with pain means crying alone some nights. It means admitting you don't have it all together. It means acknowledging that your father never said what you needed to hear, that she left, and it still haunts you, that you let yourself down, and the guilt is still there. But once you name it, once you face it, it loses power. You start to rise. The strongest men you know, they didn't get there by running. They walked through fire. They sat in the silence. They looked their demons in the eye and said, "You don't scare me anymore." That's where true masculinity lives. Not in denial, but in confrontation. Not in how loud you speak, but in how deeply you feel without collapsing. So if there's pain you've been hiding, stop. Sit with it. Ask it, what are you here to teach me? What truth have I been avoiding? Because when you face pain directly, you stop being ruled by it. You stop leaking it onto others. You stop carrying it in your posture, your tone, your reactions, and you start transforming it into wisdom. Running makes you reactive. Facing it makes you unshakable. This doesn't mean you become emotionless. It means you become emotionally responsible. You don't use your pain as an excuse. You use it as a lesson. You rise, not because you feel nothing, but because you've chosen to feel everything and still move forward. And if you've been told that pain is something to hide, remember this. What you don't face, you pass on, to your partner, to your children, to your future. So be the man who breaks the chain, who stops running, who feels fully, who stands in the fire and walks out forged. Because pain will shape you, one way or another. The question is, will it break you or build you? 5. Don't let your need for love make you weak. Every man wants to be loved. That's not weakness. It's human. But what turns this natural desire into self-destruction is when love becomes a need instead of a gift. When it becomes something you chase, beg for, sacrifice your dignity to hold on to. And the world won't stop you. It will even romanticize it. The man who loves so hard, who never gives up, who would do anything to be chosen. But beneath the poetic language is often a man who's lost himself in the pursuit of connection. There's nothing admirable about abandoning your self-worth just to feel loved. That's not love. That's dependency. And dependency is fertile ground for manipulation, heartbreak, and quiet humiliation. Because the moment your sense of value is tied to someone else's presence, approval, or affection, you've handed them your power, whether you realize it or not. Love should be something you give from wholeness, not desperation. You can love someone deeply, fiercely even, but never forget this. If you need them to feel complete, you've already broken something inside yourself. That kind of love becomes a trap. You start walking on eggshells, afraid to lose them. You tolerate behavior you shouldn't. You abandon your boundaries. You silence your needs. And all the while, you call it commitment, or patience, or being a good man. But it's not patience, it's fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of not being enough without them. Fear that if they leave, your world crumbles. And no matter how strong you act on the surface, when love turns into need, you become emotionally dependent. And emotional dependency is the opposite of strength. A man who's unbreakable doesn't love less. He loves better, with eyes open, with boundaries intact, with the ability to say, I care about you deeply, but if I have to betray myself to keep you, I won't. That's not cold. That's clarity. That's the kind of love that invites respect instead of pity. You have to be able to walk away from someone, not because you want to, but because you're unwilling to become a shell of yourself just to be loved. And yes, it's painful. Yes, you'll feel the ache. But here's what's worse: staying in something that drains your spirit because you don't believe you deserve more. This doesn't mean you build walls or become emotionally unavailable. It means you stop confusing love with survival. Real love doesn't demand your submission. It respects your truth. It doesn't make you shrink. It makes you rise. And if what you're in doesn't allow that, then what you're in isn't love. It's attachment disguised as devotion. So ask yourself, would I still feel whole if they walked away? Would I still stand tall, or would I collapse because I built my worth around their presence? If the answer scares you, that's not a signal to cling tighter. It's a signal to go inward and reclaim what you've handed away. Because the man who's strong enough to love without losing himself, that man is dangerous. Not because he's heartless, but because he's not controlled by longing. He's not addicted to being chosen. He doesn't beg. He doesn't plead. He simply shows up fully. And if that's not enough for someone, he lets them go. And in doing so, he becomes unbreakable, not untouched by pain, but unafraid of it, not immune to love, but never enslaved by it. That's where real strength lives, not in needing to be loved, but in choosing to love without giving away your soul. 6. Control your mouth. Not everything needs a reaction. There's a quiet kind of strength that's becoming rare in the world, the strength to stay calm when provoked, the discipline to choose silence when your pride is screaming, the wisdom to know that not every opinion deserves a response. Most men are reactive. Someone insults them, and they bite back. Someone disrespects them, and they're ready for war. But here's the thing. Just because you're triggered doesn't mean you have to act. Real power is restraint. The loudest man in the room is rarely the strongest. He's often the most insecure. Because when you're grounded in who you are, you don't need to prove it with volume. You don't need to throw words like weapons just to feel in control. You are in control, precisely because you don't feel the need to prove it to anyone. And it starts with your mouth. The tongue is one of the smallest muscles in the body and the most dangerous when undisciplined. One sentence spoken in anger can destroy a relationship you spent years building. One careless comment can spark a fire you never meant to ignite. And the tragedy? Most of the time we don't even mean it. We were just reacting to pain, to ego, to a moment of weakness we didn't pause long enough to master. But the man who's unbreakable, he pauses, he listens, he breathes, and in that space between the trigger and the response, he chooses. He chooses not to be ruled by impulse, not to speak just to defend, not to react just to feel powerful, because he knows something weaker men don't. That silence is a weapon too, a wise one, a strategic one, a powerful one. This doesn't mean you never speak up. It means you speak with intention. You speak because it adds clarity, not chaos, because it creates direction, not destruction, because it builds something, not burns everything down. And when you do speak, your words land harder, not because they're loud, but because they're rare, earned, controlled, measured. Some people will try to bait you into conflict just to get a reaction. They'll throw passive-aggressive comments, lies, gossip, drama. Why? Because your peace threatens them. Your self-control shines a light on their chaos. And the moment you respond, they win. Not because they're right, but because they pulled you down to their level. Don't give them that. Don't hand over your peace just to prove you're not weak, because you prove nothing by reacting to fools. As the proverb says, don't wrestle with pigs, you'll both get dirty, and the pig likes it. The disciplined man sees through the game. He doesn't get dragged into arguments that don't matter. He doesn't feel the need to respond to every criticism. He doesn't give away his energy to people who are only looking for a reaction. Why? Because his mouth is governed by principle, not pride. You want to be unbreakable? Start by mastering your speech. Let your silence unsettle people. Let your calm confuse those who thrive on chaos. And when you do speak, speak like a man who doesn't need to be right, just true. Before you open your mouth, ask yourself, am I about to speak out of pain or purpose? Is this a reaction or a response? Am I defending myself or distracting from something deeper I need to feel? And if you don't like the answer, don't speak. Discipline starts here, with your words, because the man who controls his mouth controls his life. 7. Stop chasing people who don't value you. There's a certain kind of heartbreak that doesn't come from being rejected. It comes from rejecting yourself just to be accepted. And the truth is, many men spend years running after people who couldn't care less, investing time, energy, emotion, and even dignity trying to be seen, trying to be chosen. But chasing someone who doesn't value you is the slowest form of self-destruction, because it's not just your time that's wasted. It's your worth that gets eroded. You can't force someone to appreciate you. No amount of patience, kindness, or effort can make someone see your value if they're committed to being blind to it. And every time you reach out to someone who constantly pulls away, every time you explain yourself to someone who never really listens, every time you try to prove your worth to someone who only gives you crumbs, you are teaching your nervous system that love is earned through self-betrayal. That is not strength. That is emotional slavery, and it's time to stop calling it loyalty. A man who knows his value doesn't beg to be chosen. He doesn't chase attention. He doesn't cling to people who make him feel like he's hard to love. He recognizes when someone's presence costs him his peace, and instead of doubling down, he steps back. Not because he's bitter, but because he respects himself too much to stay where he's not honored. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away without a scene. No final monologue, no drama, just silence. The kind that says, "I've realized I don't belong here." And that silence will echo louder than anything you could say. And yes, it hurts. It hurts to give up on the version of the story where they finally see your value. It hurts to accept that the connection you wanted isn't mutual, but holding onto a one-sided bond hurts more. It steals your focus. It clouds your self-worth. It turns you into a version of yourself that's always waiting, always overthinking, always unsettled. There's no peace in chasing, only exhaustion. You have to understand this. People who truly see your worth won't make you beg for their time. You won't have to decode mixed signals or shrink your truth to keep them interested. The right ones will value your presence without needing to be convinced. But they'll never find you if you're busy chasing the wrong ones. Your energy is finite. Don't waste it trying to earn love where you're only tolerated. So if you feel like you're chasing, pause. Ask yourself, why am I fighting so hard to stay in a space that doesn't want me? Is it because of hope or fear? Because often we chase not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear that maybe we're not good enough unless someone else confirms it. But the man who becomes unbreakable is the one who chooses himself. He doesn't chase, he aligns. He doesn't beg, he builds. He doesn't cling, he lets go, and in doing so, he makes room for the right people to find him. There's no dignity in pursuit without reciprocity. So, hold your head high. Walk away from half-hearted interest. And remember this, when you stop chasing, you start attracting. Because nothing is more magnetic than a man who values himself so deeply that he no longer needs to convince anyone else to. 8. Don't fear rejection. Fear losing yourself trying to be accepted. Rejection hurts. We all know that. It stings in the moment, makes you question your worth, floods your mind with doubts. But as painful as rejection is, there's something far worse. Becoming someone you're not, just so people won't walk away. That's not strength. That's quiet self-erasure. Because the man who bends too often to be accepted eventually forgets what he stood for in the first place. We're wired to want belonging. It's biological. But in today's world, belonging has been hijacked by performance. People don't want your truth. They want your alignment, your agreement, your submission. And if you're not grounded, you'll fall for the lie that says, if I just adjust a little, maybe they'll like me. If I just hold back, maybe they'll stay. And little by little, you lose yourself. You become the version of you that fits the room, not the one that fits your soul. You silence your opinions. You laugh when it's not funny. You tolerate disrespect just to avoid tension. You say yes when your entire body wants to say no. And what's the reward? Temporary approval, surface-level connection, relationships built on performance, not truth. That's not connection, that's captivity. But the man who's unbreakable, he fears something deeper. He fears waking up one day and realizing he's lived a life made of compromises, that he spent years chasing validation while his values collected dust, that he lost the essence of who he is just to earn a seat at tables that were never meant for him. True acceptance should never cost you your authenticity. If it does, it's not worth it. The rooms you belong in won't ask you to water yourself down. The people who see you clearly won't require performance. And the peace you're looking for? It doesn't come from applause. It comes from alignment. It's okay to be misunderstood. It's okay to be excluded. It's okay to be too much for some and not enough for others. What's not okay is betraying yourself to belong, because the more you do that, the harder it becomes to find your way back. And eventually, you won't know where the mask ends and you begin. Rejection, when viewed rightly, is protection. It clears the room of those who don't match your truth. It teaches you who's really there for you, and who's only there for the version of you they created in their minds. And every time you're rejected while being real, you get stronger. You get sharper. You get closer to the life that actually fits. So let them walk. Let them misunderstand. Let them say you've changed, because you have. You've outgrown performance. You've outgrown being liked at the cost of being whole. You've outgrown the need to please everyone but yourself. The strongest men aren't the ones who are loved by all. They're the ones who are respected by themselves. And that respect only grows when you choose authenticity over acceptance. When you say, "I'd rather be alone than be applauded for someone I'm not." And the beautiful thing? When you live like that, you begin to attract people who see the real you, who don't need you to dim your light, who don't flinch when you speak your truth, who say, "Finally, someone who's real." So the next time you're tempted to change yourself to fit in, ask, if I'm not being me, then who exactly is being accepted here? And if you don't like the answer, walk away, with your head high, with your spine straight. Because the man who fears losing himself more than losing people, that man is unbreakable. 9. Stand for what's right, even if it costs you comfort. There's a moment every man faces when doing what's right comes with a price. Maybe it's standing up to a friend who crossed a line. Maybe it's refusing to stay silent in a room full of lies. Maybe it's walking away from a situation that benefits you, but betrays your principles. That moment is a test, and many men fail it, not because they don't know what's right, but because it's easier not to act on it. Comfort is seductive, it's safe, it's warm, and it makes cowards of men who once swore they'd live with integrity. Because here's the truth, doing the right thing often feels like doing the hard thing. It doesn't come with cheers. It doesn't guarantee rewards. Sometimes it leaves you standing alone while the rest of the world looks the other way. But if you abandon your values to stay comfortable, you're not escaping pain. You're inviting regret. The unbreakable man knows this. He knows that strength isn't proven when everything is easy. It's revealed when everything is at risk. He doesn't just talk about honor or integrity when it's convenient. He lives it, even when no one's watching, especially then, because that's the measure of character, what you choose when the world isn't handing you applause. And this isn't about being perfect. It's about being consistent, about choosing the path that aligns with your values, not just your preferences. Because comfort can make you soft. It whispers lies like, just this once, or you deserve it, or don't make a scene. But deep down, you know. You know when you're trading your truth for ease. You feel it in your gut, that quiet discomfort that follows a compromised decision. Sometimes standing for what's right means losing the deal, ending the friendship, saying no to something that would benefit you financially, socially, or emotionally. And in those moments, you might feel like you're missing out. But you're not. You're preserving something that no amount of money or praise can buy, your soul. Because a man who always chooses the easy road never develops a backbone. He's agreeable, yes. He's liked, maybe. But he's forgettable, because he stands for nothing. And if you stand for nothing, anyone can move you. Anyone can own you. Anyone can shake you with pressure, reward, or fear. But the man who's unbreakable, he doesn't flinch when the world asks him to bend. He doesn't lower his standards to make people comfortable. He doesn't look for shortcuts when it comes to truth. And because of that, he carries a kind of power that doesn't need to be loud. It just is. It's not easy. It never will be. Doing the right thing rarely feels good in the moment, but the long-term peace that follows it, the kind that lets you sleep at night, the kind that lets you walk tall through life, that peace is priceless. And it only belongs to men who've earned it by choosing discomfort over dishonor. So ask yourself, what am I tolerating because it's easy? What have I kept quiet about just to stay liked? What truth have I swallowed to avoid tension? Because every time you choose ease over ethics, you weaken the foundation beneath your feet. And eventually, it cracks. But when you choose to stand, even if your voice shakes, even if your knees do too, you build something solid. And that kind of man, he may walk alone, but he walks free. 10. Don't depend on anyone for your peace or power. It's tempting to believe that peace comes from the right environment, the right relationship, or the right set of circumstances, that if the people around you would just treat you better, love you more, or stop disappointing you, then you'd finally feel calm, clear, and in control. But that belief, while comfortable, is a trap. Because the moment your inner world depends on external behavior, you've handed over the keys to your emotional life. You're no longer in control. You're reactive, vulnerable, breakable. The unbreakable man doesn't outsource his peace. He doesn't hand it to his partner and say, "Keep this safe for me." He doesn't give it to his boss or his parents or his followers on social media. Why? Because people are inconsistent. Circumstances change. The world is chaotic. And if your stability is built on things you can't control, you'll constantly feel like you're at the mercy of life. One bad comment ruins your day. One missed call rattles your mind. One failed plan sends you spiraling. That's not peace. That's dependency dressed up as comfort. Real peace, the kind that can't be shaken, is built from the inside out. It comes from doing the work of knowing yourself, healing your wounds, facing your shadows, and choosing stillness even when the world is screaming. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It doesn't need a quote or a ritual or a perfect morning routine. It's the quiet awareness that no matter what happens out there, I am rooted in here. And that kind of peace, it scares people, because when a man doesn't flinch, when he doesn't need applause, when he doesn't chase love or validation or control, he becomes untouchable, not because he doesn't feel, but because he no longer depends on anyone else to manage his emotions. The same goes for power. Power isn't being in charge of others. It's being in charge of yourself. It's not dominance, it's discipline. And you don't get it by manipulating, controlling, or proving anything. You get it by doing the hard things, waking up when you don't feel like it, letting go when it hurts, holding boundaries even when it's uncomfortable. That's power, and it's not given, it's built, quietly, daily, internally. Too many men look for someone else to give them a sense of worth, a partner who makes them feel like a man, a job title that makes them feel important, a bank account that makes them feel secure. But none of it lasts. Because if someone else can give it to you, they can take it away. And then what? Then you're right back where you started, dependent, anxious, off balance. But the man who builds his life on internal principles, who wakes up each day and says, I am responsible for how I feel, how I act, and how I think, that man becomes solid. He's not perfect. He gets hurt, sure. But he doesn't collapse, because his identity isn't built on approval. His peace isn't built on performance. His power doesn't need confirmation. It's confirmed every time he shows up, no matter how hard life gets. So take a moment, look at your life. Ask, who am I still depending on to feel okay? What external thing am I leaning on for validation or strength? And then ask the harder question, what would happen if I had to let go of it tomorrow? If the thought terrifies you, that's the work, that's the wound. And that's your next step. Reclaim it. All of it. Stop handing your emotional life to people who didn't ask to hold it. Stop blaming your circumstances for your imbalance. Stop waiting for the world to give you permission to feel okay. Build your own peace. Build your own power. Because once you do, you'll realize you never needed anything outside of you to be whole in the first place. 11. Make discipline a lifestyle, not a mood. There's a myth that floats around quietly in the minds of men, the idea that motivation will one day arrive like a wave and carry you to greatness, that you just need to feel ready, and then everything will align. But the men who wait for motivation stay stuck. They start strong, but fade quickly. They build castles of ambition on sand foundations of inconsistency. Because the truth is harsh but liberating, discipline is not a feeling. It's a decision. One you make every single day, especially when you don't feel like it. The unbreakable man doesn't rely on mood. He builds systems. He creates rituals that outlast the emotional highs and carry him through the lows. He understands that greatness is found in repetition, in showing up again and again when no one's watching, when no one's applauding, when nothing feels exciting. Because that's where most people quit. Not because they can't, but because they don't feel like it. But feelings are liars. They fluctuate. They're shaped by sleep, diet, stress, opinions, weather, even a bad conversation. If your actions are at the mercy of your moods, your life will be unstable. You'll drift. You'll procrastinate. You'll build and destroy your own progress every week. That's not a life of power. That's emotional roulette. Discipline is different. It's boring sometimes, repetitive, quiet, but it builds empires. It builds bodies that don't break, minds that don't spiral, and identities that don't dissolve the moment things get hard. And here's the secret. The more you honor your commitments, not just to others but to yourself, the more confident you become. Not from hype, but from evidence. Because you have a track record of following through. You don't just talk. You act. You can tell how strong a man is by how he behaves when no one's looking, when the pressure's off, when the reward is far away. That's the measure of real discipline. Doing what needs to be done without needing to be told, reminded, or inspired. And no, it's not glamorous. No one sees the early mornings, the skipped temptations, the lonely grind. But that's the point. The results are public, but the discipline is private, quiet, relentless, and deeply personal. The strongest men you admire, they weren't born that way. They just got tired of starting over, tired of the mental chaos that comes from living at the mercy of impulse. So they decided, I don't care how I feel. I care who I'm becoming. That's the shift. When you stop asking, do I feel like it, and start asking, what would the man I want to be do right now? That's when discipline becomes identity, not a task, a trait, not an event, a way of life. So if you're waiting to feel motivated, stop. Build a system, build a schedule. Keep promises to yourself the same way you keep them to others. Treat your commitments like sacred ground. And when your mind says, just skip today, respond with action, not emotion, just action. Because in the end, the man who builds his life on discipline doesn't rise because of talent or luck or mood. He rises because he made a vow, and he kept it. Day after day, rep after rep, decision after decision. And eventually, the world notices. But by then, it's too late, because he didn't build his life for them anyway. He built it from within. 12. Don't show your strength. Live it. We live in a time where everyone wants to appear strong, the loudest voice, the toughest face, the perfect image. We post the highlight reel, flex the wins, tell the world how unbothered we are, all while quietly battling doubt, insecurity, and internal chaos. But real strength doesn't need a stage. It doesn't need to be announced. It doesn't need applause. Because real strength is felt, not shown. The unbreakable man doesn't walk into a room looking to prove himself. He's not loud, he's not reactive. He doesn't need to dominate, intimidate, or posture. His power isn't in his volume, it's in his presence. You feel it in how he carries himself, how he listens, how he responds with calm when others explode, how he remains composed in chaos. That's the strength that can't be faked. That's the kind that only comes from doing deep, quiet work on yourself. When no one's looking. You don't become that kind of man overnight. It comes from choosing the hard road again and again, from not responding when your pride wants to, from walking away when ego screams to stay, from facing your own darkness without needing the world to clap for your healing. Strength is born in restraint, in humility, in emotional control, in quiet consistency. Anyone can lift a heavy weight. But how many men can carry emotional pain without projecting it onto others? How many can feel fear without becoming paralyzed? How many can stand in their values even when it costs them friends, money, or approval? That's real strength. It's invisible to those who only look at the surface, but it's unmistakable to those who recognize character. And let's be clear, this isn't about shrinking or hiding. It's about embodying power, not performing it. There's a kind of man who walks through life without needing validation, because he's already validated himself. He doesn't talk about what he's going to do, he just does it. He doesn't brag about how disciplined he is. His actions speak louder. He doesn't chase applause because he knows the only opinion that matters is the one he'll hold in the mirror 5 years from now. You want to be unbreakable? Stop trying to look powerful. Start being powerful. Let your routine reveal your discipline. Let your silence reveal your confidence. Let your presence reveal your growth. And most of all, let your choices reveal your character. That means showing up on the days when no one sees you, holding boundaries without broadcasting them, saying no without explanation, staying calm when others want a reaction, forgiving without being asked, choosing excellence even when mediocrity is easier. That kind of strength doesn't trend on social media, but it builds a life no one can shake. So ask yourself, am I living strong, or just trying to look strong. Because the men who only perform strength will always be exposed when real pressure hits. But the man who lives it, he doesn't break, because his foundation was never built on appearances, it was built on truth. And when your strength is rooted in truth, there is nothing left to prove. Some men live their whole lives trying to look strong, but still crumble when life tests them. Others don't say much. They don't need to. Their strength is quiet, steady, earned. It's in their eyes. It's in how they carry pain without bitterness, how they stay calm when everything around them is on fire, how they keep their word, even when no one's watching. That's the difference between appearing strong and being unbreakable. And here's the truth. No one hands you that kind of power. It's not in your DNA. It's not in your past. It's in your decisions. Every day, life gives you 1,000 chances to bend, to betray yourself, to choose comfort over character. And every time you resist, even in the smallest ways, you build a life that no storm can ruin. You build a mind that doesn't spiral, a heart that doesn't beg, a spine that doesn't fold. So don't wait for someone to recognize your worth. Don't wait for the world to clap. The unbreakable man doesn't live for applause. He lives by principle. He builds himself in silence. He sharpens his mind in solitude. He honors his word when no one's keeping track. That's who you become when you stop chasing validation and start choosing alignment. And if you ever doubt yourself, remember this. Strength isn't something you perform. It's something you live. It's in the boundaries you set, the discipline you uphold, the truth you speak, and the peace you refuse to hand over. Let the world keep searching for the next trend, the next mask, the next shortcut. You don't need any of that. You need clarity. You need courage. You need your code. So take these 12 principles and carry them into your life, not as slogans, but as standards. Let them shape how you show up, how you love, how you lead. Because the man who lives by them, he's not just respected, he's not just admired, he's unbreakable.